Hello, everybody. My name is Zoltan Famous, and welcome to the Prog Connection. In today's episode, we are going to be starting a little mini-series. We are going to be discussing the years, decades, eras. We will walk you through this as we go. Today we are discussing specifically the 60s of Prague, and we are going to be talking about our top 5 picks of that era. This is not what we find to be the most prolific. This is mostly what we find to just be the best of that era, what our favorites are. So, without further ado, I believe that we should start with Phil.
Wow, we're getting right into it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're doing the top 5 of the 60s, and that's how we're starting this.
Yep.
We're going to talk about figuring out how to continue this later. My idea for this is I'm just going to go into what my ideas are before I start us off. My idea that I suggested, and I think I was the one that kind of got the ball rolling on this, was going through the various years
Yes.
of Prague, particularly of the 70s, because that's when like Prague was the most active up until like the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And just going through and picking 5 albums from each year and talking about them.
Yeah.
And we're doing that with we're doing the top 5 of the 60s because prior to 1969, there really wasn't a lot of Prague. Like it kind of started with the Moody Blues. Days of Future Past is
Right.
like the first true progressive rock album.
Right.
And then you have bands like The Nice and Vandergraaf Generator and the lot kind of coming in and like starting their discographies in like the latter part of 67 and throughout 68. It wasn't really until 1969 when Prague really started to take off, and that leads me perfectly into my number 5, and this is going to probably get some people to crucify me for daring to not put it at number 1, but number 5 is In the Court of the Crimson King.
Interesting.
Yes. Really, I don't listen to a lot of King Crimson. I do respect them, and I do love what I've heard from them, but they're just not a group that I gravitate to a whole lot. There's certainly some stuff from them that I absolutely love, particularly the stuff with Wetton and Bruford.
Right.
And then the stuff more in the 80s during like the Beat era, which is why I'm so pleased that
Blue
Beat,
and Carrie and alike her in this project.
Yeah.
Beat.
Yes.
It's really cool.
I would love to see that live. That probably kicks ass. And I would love, honestly, to see what they would do with a studio album of their own.
Me too. That would be
in
a cool
that
idea.
same vein.
Me too.
But yeah, going back to this album.
Yeah.
If Days of Future Past was the album that birthed Prague, this was the one that defined it. This was the one that gave it. This is the blueprint of what came after. It's like,
right,
if Black Sabbath was the group that started heavy metal, then Judas Priest and Iron Maiden were the ones that, well, maybe not so much Iron Maiden because they came later, but Judas Priest especially. They were the ones that like gave it the sound that everybody thinks of when they think of heavy metal. And that's basically how I see it with In the Court of the Crimson King. Obviously, 21st Century Schizoid Man, the title track, Moonchild are all classics. I think my favorite on this album is honestly I Talk to the Wind. That really
Epitaph
soft
is
kind of English folk with the flutes. It all sounds so beautiful. I love listening to it whenever I get the chance.
Title track, Epitaph, all of it.
I already... Yeah, it's all... It is a masterpiece.
It is a very good.
So then why not put it at number 1?
I just like the albums on my list
A little
that
bit.
are higher better.
Fair enough.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
All right. Dad,
Like-
want to say your number 5?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to do a list like this without having some kind of, sort of respect for historical context and
Right.
what came after that and which albums were influential and what came next. And that's almost a given, even if you don't say it explicitly.
Right.
So given the influence that this band had, I will put my number 5 as The Thoughts of Emerlis Stavjak. Again, just, this began the whole, to me, it's kind of really the real beginning of sort of real prog with classical influences and jazz influences. And for me, sort of, the beginning of prog is basically Keith Emerson for me. It's what it is. Prog is Keith Emerson. He is prog. So that's my number 5. And yes, for the same reason that Phil said, it's just not my favorite. But it's good. And you can certainly hear the influences. This has been cited by Genesis as to be very important in their development of the knife, right? In fact, they used to call that the knife. The working title was The Nice before they came up with lyrics, right? Because it was
That's
so
pretty great.
Right? Because it was so influenced by this. And Tony Begg's keyboard playing was obviously influenced by Keith Emerson.
I believe they specifically reference or cite Rondo as the big influence on the knife.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's partially why I picked it, but I mean it's very listenable. I know I get Zoe, you and I had the discussion. It's got a little bit of a psychedelic.
I do believe
influence
that the first 2
sometimes,
tracks
a
are
little bit,
unbelievably psychedelic. They are more akin to the Rolling Stones to me than prog in any shape or form. But I do believe that the following tracks after, especially the third track and Rondo, are definitely more indicative of what ELP would do.
Yeah, so Zoe, again, it's just some of it's just we listen to all these things throughout the week, Zoe. You and
Yes,
I,
we did.
and it's just we listen to everything we possibly could, and so this was my sort of in 5th place for my taste. So I put The Nice at 5th. On to you, son.
My number 5. This is an album that I had not actually listened to. I've heard it referenced by Genesis. I've heard it referenced by Andy Edwards, among other prog YouTubers, but I've never actually given this album a listen. And this is one of those albums that you can definitely hear what Genesis was doing. You can absolutely hear almost everything Peter Gabriel was doing with his vocals. And it's weird to hear this, a weirder, more psychedelic version of Genesis without any of the band members. So I'm going to go with, for my number 5, Music in the Doll's House by Family. And I do think that the lead singer is creepily Peter Gabriel before Gabriel. The music, there's a couple of songs that definitely remind me of Trespass. There's a couple of songs that remind me of Tull. There's a couple of songs that remind me of more the psychedelic passages of Yes in a way, and definitely a little bit vocally Gentle Giant. But it's very odd. It's an eclectic album released in 1968, so it's a bit before King Crimson. It's before the first Genesis album. It's very interesting. So if you ever have the time to listen to this album, give it a try. Music in Doll's House by Family. Great album. That'll be my number 5. Phil?
So I'm going to continue on with my list, and I'm going to say my number 4 is Stand Up by Jethro Tull.
Okay.
The first album to feature Martin Barr, and the last one to be and the last one of the 70s or 60s. This was obviously not their first album. Well, actually, this was their first album. I'm sorry. I'll see myself out.
Boo.
But yeah, this is the addition of Martin Barr and leaving of Mick Abrahams really kind of cemented where the band was going with this album, and they were definitely going more experimental. Their blend of hard rock, jazz, blues, and folk were even more prominent than on the previous album. This was the start of their progressive rock sound, even if it might be a little bit outside of prog. And honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that they became so much proggier later with albums like Aqualung and Thick as a Brick, all throughout and the other stuff all throughout the 70s, I don't know if I would have put this on the list, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the album itself is really good, and there's enough elements of their prog sound that are here that I think it qualifies. My favorite track on the album is the Beret, or I think that's how you pronounce it. The Bach track that they rearranged is so jazzy and bluesy and fun, and it's literally a classical track that they covered and turned into a rock track. So the classical influence is right there.
Yeah, there you go. Pretty good pick.
But plenty other great stuff on here. New Yesterday, Nothing Is Easy, Look Into the Sun.
Right.
Great stuff.
Interesting. I really should have considered it again. Okay, Dad, you go ahead. You're number 4.
My number 4, because you listen through things and then it's hard to decide exactly where to put things, right? Because on any one day, when your mood changes, you like something more. Like Zoe, when we listened to some of the family stuff, I really liked it.
Yeah.
But then when we put it on a different day, it was just like okay, well, just didn't quite hit me as much as it did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, that's a lot of what it is, right? Is whatever hits you on that particular day.
Right.
So for me, at number 4, I had the debut by Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I thought it was a good album. It is a good album, and again, Yes became one of the greatest prog bands of all, and this album has all of the elements of the way that they eventually started sounding. But it just wasn't them at their best. So it was a debut, and it's not fully developed. So it's tough a little bit. Some of these things, it's just the way that you feel when you put the list together. And so for me, number 4 would be the Yes debut. Over to you, son.
My number 4 is also going to be the Yes debut. I think that it's a pretty fair mention. There's a lot of just obvious standouts. Survival being an obvious fan favorite and band favorite. But I think that there's a couple of songs where the 60s style is a little bit too prominent. Yet, I think that there's also a lot of songs where they do innovate. So it's a good
Zoltan.
60s album.
Zoltan, just by the look on Phil's face, he's horrified that we put this at number 4 because that means he put it at number 1.
Actually, another blasphemy.
No, coming.
The Yes debut is not on my list.
Oh!
Okay. Oh, all right.
Okay, I was not expecting that.
I didn't put the Tull on my list either, so there you go.
Oh,
Even though I'm a Tull fanatic, but I didn't.
Good pick. I think I'll go with that.
I thought it was too bluesy to put on my list, but that's just me.
Phil, you're number 3.
All right. This is a more recent discovery for me. And I, to this day, am not 100% sure how to pronounce the band's name.
Procol Harum.
Procol Harum. Yes. Wikipedia just helped me. I was always hesitant to call it harem because of what a harem is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why would a... But you know what? Whatever.
Don't even bother. And don't do it. Don't open that can of beans on this channel.
I have no intention of doing so, but I do have the intention of saying which Procol Harum album I picked, and that is A Salty Dog.
Ooh, interesting.
You want to talk about proto-Genesis? What Genesis sounded like, what band sounded like Genesis before Genesis? I don't know if I could think of a better example of that than this album.
Yeah.
There is so much, especially on the first half of the album. Gary Brooker sounds almost exactly like Peter Gabriel on the first half of this album. On the second half, not so much. I don't know why. Maybe he changed his voice or something. I have no idea. But the first half of this thing is like straight up like pre-Trespass, like Trespass era Genesis before Trespass. Like the title track, A Salty Dog, The Milk of Human Kindness, The Devil Came from Kansas, the track Boredom, which is very interesting. It's like late 60s progressive rock, Caribbean island. I have no idea what the hell to call it. But like it sounds like something you would hear like on like a Caribbean island beach, but it's still Prague.
Wow.
And it's weird, and I love it. The rest of the album after that, Juicy John Pink has like a really strong blues flavor, and then just like everything else after that is considerably less Genesis sounding, but it all still sounds fucking great, especially Crucifixion Lane. I think that's my favorite track on the second half. It's a great Prague album, and it's 1969. It was before In the Court of the Crimson King, but it's still very much another one of those genre-defining early Prague albums.
Solid pick. Dad, your number 3?
So my number 3 is going to be The Moody Blues Days of Future Past. Again, classic album with so much that was so influential in what came after in terms of prog sounding and the song, the Nights and Ones That and all that stuff, and Tuesday After, whatever it is, like just great stuff. Again, it's almost like the Yes album in that or that Nice album I mentioned. It's just that it's not really standing the test of time as much, right? Because so much other stuff came after it that was so much more innovative that it now seems a little bit quaint. But still, I think it's a great album, and it's deserving of, for me, third. Over to you, son.
For me, my number 3 will... I want to put this a little higher, but I don't think I will. I think that it's mostly because the first and second are both more iconic, and I do believe overall slightly better. But I would argue that this probably has the best track out of all 3. And I will say that my number 3 is Shine On Brightly by Procol Harum. And that is because In Hell 'Twas I is a fantastic epic, and it might be the best song out of all 5 albums that I have presented on my list. That song alone is worthy of putting it in the top 5. fantastic 16 minutes of just pure proto prog. It's nearly perfect. It's nearly prog in itself, just by itself, without
I mean, it is prog by
taking out
itself.
the proto. It's so close to just being the 70s prog. It's right on the cusp. And I think I understand where a lot of bands, specifically Yes, Genesis, I believe even Crimson, along with a lot of other bands, just took a lot of inspiration from this epic. Fantastic. That's where I'm leaving it off. Number 2, Phil.
My number 2, we're going across the pond.
Oh, the
We're
pond.
heading to the States
No.
because I'm going to talk about what is arguably the very first American progressive rock album. And that is, of course, Chicago Transit Authority by Chicago.
Interesting.
A lot of people do not consider Chicago a prog band, and for the most part, I would agree. I would, however, say that with the exception of the first 2
That's what I thought you were going to
albums,
say.
Chicago Transit Authority and Chicago
2
/ Chicago 2, which is how I refer to it as.
Yeah. Most do, at least, if I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it is a little bit more straight ahead rock and roll with horns.
Yeah.
But I would say that for the most part, American prog in general has less emphasis on the classical influence and more emphasis on just like blues rock and jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear that with Kansas. Like the classical influence and the influence from Yes and Genesis are there in Kansas, but it is still more like you can hear the more bluesy and the more jazzy influence on their albums. And the same thing with Ambrosia. Like they're very much kind of more of like a jazzy style prog group when they were a prog group. But going back to this is the first American progressive rock album. Introduction, Beginnings is a fantastic kind of poppy, jazzy prog song. The final track on the album, Liberation, 14 minutes. Poem 58, 8 minutes. This whole thing is a double album, so it's 12 tracks in all, but those 12 tracks bring it up to 76 minutes in length. But you know what? If you can listen to Tales from Topographic Oceans, you can listen to this.
Okay.
And
yeah,
a lot. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of people giving me like, you know, raising their eyebrows at me for including this, but no, this is a prog album. It may not be prog in the same way that the King Crimson is in terms of the influences, but there is enough that we associate with prog in here that it should qualify.
Fair. Dad, number 2?
My number 2 may stump you a bit, Zoltan.
Oh, will it now?
Well, maybe because, you know, as my list is carried on, you would have probably thought that this is going to have to be number 1, but it's going to be my number 2, which is King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, set the template for 70s prog, right?
Yeah.
Particularly with the use of the mellotron on the title track, right? Is kind of like, you know, that's what. But you know, again, it's just I'm not the biggest King Crimson fan. You know, I'm like I like a lot of the stuff, but I don't love it like I love Genesis, and I don't like I love Yes. But you know, again, but it is, again, it's almost like the Moody Blues album, the Days of Future Past, it's a template for future stuff and gave so much inspiration that it's it is one of the great albums, and it's always an enjoyable listen. So for me, number 2. Over to you, bud.
My number 2 is going
considerably less blasphemous than me.
My number 2 is going to be Days of Future Past by the Moody Blues. I do think that this is... excuse me. I believe that this album was almost recreated about nearly a decade later with Tales of Mystery and Imagination by the Alan Parsons Project. But, and when I say recreated, I mean more recreated with a giant exaggeration on that same idea and concept. But I do believe that this, along with some Floyd, is what basically was the foundation for one of my favorite prog bands, the Alan Parsons Project. So I think that this one's just a great, solid proto-prog album. It's strong. It's really early, too. I think that this is the earliest one on my list. Awesome. Great album. Hard to argue with it. I'm going with the Days of Future Past by Moody Blues as my number 2. Phil, your number 1.
Well, I don't think there's any point in dragging this out. My number 1 is Days of Future Past by the Moody Blues. I'm going to disagree. I don't think this is proto-prog at all. I think this is just full-on prog. Now, a lot of people will disagree with that, and they're wrong. It's just so many people use the fact that there's like no time, there's no like odd time signatures, and it's just a collection of like shorter pop songs stitched together. And I'm like, okay, this was before all of that was really much of a thing.
Did you hear what
and
Peter
Prog
Gabriel
had to start
said?
somewhere.
Did you hear what Peter Gabriel said are Genesis tracks? They're overblown pop songs. Come on.
Yeah. I don't know how much I agree with Gabriel about that, but that's neither here nor there for this conversation.
I suppose. Go on.
This album has most of the hallmarks that you would expect to find in a prog album. Classical influence. There is literally an orchestra here. Liberal use of mellotron.
Oh, yeah.
This is a concept album, number 3. Longer, multi-part tracks.
Yep, long-form composition.
Yep, long-form composition, especially in the
Later half?
the second half. The second half of the album is exclusively multi-part suites.
Yeah.
And yet, they're
cool.
just pop songs that are stitched together with orchestra. Prog had to start somewhere, dipshit.
That is very true, yeah. It does have to start somewhere.
And, every song on this album is phenomenal. There is no filler at all. Even the orchestra breaks in between the songs and in between the parts of the longer songs.
Yeah.
All fit. None of it feels wasted at all. None of it feels like filler.
No.
And then, just going into the songs themselves, Dawn is a Feeling. I'm going to skip over The Day Begins because that's pretty much just an orchestral overture with some Mike Pinder narration. And it's beautiful and I love it, but, I'm not going to talk the meat of the album is everything that came after that. And it's all gorgeous. Dawn is a Feeling, Another Morning, Peak Hour, which is kind of like a Beach Boys homage a little bit with the harmonies and the feel of that song. It kind of has a surf rock feel a little bit, not completely.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Forever Afternoon, which most people call Tuesday Afternoon. Evening, Time to Get Away. I think my favorite part of the album is the second half of the track Evening, Twilight Time. And then, of course, Nights in White Satin.
Right.
I don't need to say anything else about that. Just Nights in White Satin. If you don't like that song, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Especially the fucking, again, liberal use of Mellotron. I need to bring this up since we're on the topic of Nights in White Satin. I saw, I want to say it was a documentary about the Moody Blues, and they were going through, they were talking about this album, and Justin Hayward was talking about bringing in Nights in White Satin, and it was him singing along with the guitar, and he was playing it for the rest of the group. And like when he was done, they were like, all right, that's pretty cool. And then Mike Pinder sat down at the Mellotron and was like, play it again. And he starts, so Mike Pinder starts that do 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 on the Mellotron, and like everybody else is like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!"
There you go. That's awesome.
I love that so much.
I have to see that.
Yes. So yeah, with all that out the way, Days of Future Past is my number one. It is the first true progressive rock album, and oh my god, what a way to create a genre.
Dad, your number one?
My number one is Shine On Brightly by Procol Harum. I don't know, this Zoe, as we were listening through this, it's just something about this, as you're saying, this is the beginning of prog, right? As Phil was just saying how I think he had that same feeling about the Days of Future Past, but for me, I probably listened to that album like 25,000 times. Whereas this Procol Harum album, even though I'm picking it as number one, it's not an album I've listened to a million times in my life. But as we were doing this, I'm just like, that's it. That's the one. That's the one for me. That's the beginning. For me, that's kind of like the beginning of prog. It's just you can hear the sound, and and In Hell Was I was kind of like the first, 17 and a half minute song. Like that is right in the style of what prog is, of all these bits that you put together, and
yeah.
So I don't have a ton to say about it other than that was my favorite of all the things we listened to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would pick the Procol Harum album, Shine On Brightly, as my number one prog album.
It's a great album, and I think that's a fairly appropriate pick, at least. Both of your picks were fairly appropriate, as do I believe with my first overall pick, which this is not a draft for a sports league. I don't know why I said first overall pick, but we're gonna go ahead and say my number one is probably everyone's obvious. It's too obvious, but it is probably
there was going
the best
to be
overall
one
60s
person
album.
here who had that. There was no doubt about that.
In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. It's not because it really is mostly because of the fact that it is the legacy that this album built. But I do believe that there's no real weak point on this album either. It is just one of those albums that's, a 60s masterpiece. But I can say that about all three of the top three in my list.
Zoltan.
Yeah.
How old were you when In the Court of the Crimson came out?
I don't think I was out. I don't think I was a born boy. Yeah, I don't. You were only 2. No, you were 4. My bad. Wrong album. Wrong album. I was going to point this out. I did just want to check. I think that there may be an argument to be made that potentially the first prog-related album would be Pet Sounds.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I think that that could be, in my opinion, at least because of how influential it was to
That's the
bands
first
like Yes.
proto-prog album.
I would say that that could be considered where bands like, specifically Yes, but also, like you said, a homage to Beach Boys on Days of Future Past. But it also is just a very artsy pop album that I can see a lot of bands took influence from, especially in prog.
I mean, hell, Pet Sounds was literally the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the reason, but like the motivation for the Beatles to put out Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like they were literally like they heard Pet Sounds and like, how are we going to compete with this? And they gave it the old college try, and we got Sgt. Pepper out of it, which is another incredible album.
That's also a very arguable one to put in this list. I did not consider it, but I did think about honorable mentions, and if I did, I would have put Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band as my honorable mentions.
I would have done the same, and I would have arguably also, I would have also potentially put Revolver on there too.
Yeah. Also, I would go with if I had a third, it would probably be The Thoughts of Emerless Jack because Rondo is ridiculous, and that's a great track. But is there anything else anyone wanted to touch up on before we close up?
No,
Well,
just-
even though it wasn't on my list, I also should shout out Yes's debut album. It's a really good album for what it is. It's a really good 60s album.
True.
It's just not, I mean, it is Yes.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Mm.
And it's just not what I think of when I think of top tier prog from before the pinnacle of prog.
Right. I think... Anything else, anyone?
Not really.
All right. And I think that'll do it. Thank you all very much for watching this first episode of the Prog Through the Years. We'll figure out a title for this eventually. Someone will come up with something clever, I'm sure. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. Peace.